This content is brought to you by channel members. Thank you all very much. Well, welcome once more, ladies and gentlemen, to the Lost Lore Library with me, the Lost Lore Scholar. I am joined once again by Victor, the creative director over at Once Lost Games. How are you doing, sir?
I'm doing fantastic.
Good.
How
I
are
even
you?
I even have the right mug. Look at that. I don't think these are available in the shop anymore, but I think there are still things available in the Wayward Realms shop for people to go and buy and further support the project. Look, I'm already shilling. They don't pay me, I promise. I'm
We
just a simp.
appreciate that. Although, should I show off our very
Oh,
much unavailable
oh,
developer mugs that we got from Ted as a Christmas present
that
2 years
is
ago, I believe.
that's wonderful. My wife's favorite hoodie remains the Death Knight Wayward Realms hoodie. It's the most comfortable one she owns, and with the baby just a few weeks away now, it's getting a lot of use. We were having some private chats over Discord in a draconic sense of the word. By which I mean I was applying the thumb screws and attempting to get some information about dragons out of you. And we thought, well, why don't we just have a talk about dragons? See where the team might be leaning towards with dragons. Maybe you can hint and tease at a few things, but really, this is going to be a little bit more generic than just here is all the information about the Wayward Realms dragons.
Sure, and it also gives an insight as to like what kind of inspirations and these frame of thoughts that we have going into the creation of our dragons and how we want them to sort of follow those tropes as usual, but then also have our own wayward
Hmm.
spin on them as well. So
Well, you know me by this point. I'm very much a traditional fantasy fan. In
mhm.
fact, I recorded a video with another YouTuber by the name of the Brass Drake about dragons on Monday night, which was going to go out, but I think I'll put this one out first. So if you're more hungry about dragon stuff, keep an eye out for that video as well. And it was talking about the size of dragons. So I think the best thing I can probably ask is, what do you think a good size for a dragon is? Do you like your Godzilla kaiju's, or are you more of a restrained and refined gentleman such as I, and you prefer your smaller dragons?
um, smaller, but still, I guess what you could say would be a bit Titanic, right?
Mhm.
Nothing kaiju size. I think that's a bit too.
Mm.
I do, I like my more grounded fantasies. So something that feels like it could exist in this world, like like we had
Mm.
megafauna, like the dinosaurs, right? And so
Mm.
something along the, that end on the larger side, probably I think is
Mm.
a good
Mm.
size for dragons.
In my own personal mythos, and if I find any of this turning up in the Wayward Realms, I'm suing you. In my own personal mythos, my dragons tend to be large enough as an adult to swallow a man whole, which I think is still very fantastically big, but it is believable enough. I died. I'm back. But it is believable enough, I think, to have a dragon that is able to just open its jaws and just someone is gone.
Mhm.
Especially because people are smaller back then.
That's the number one reason right there. Yeah, no, I fully agree there. And of course, there is the discussion that I guess we probably will get into with this and talk about like the various depictions of dragons and stuff like that. What exactly you want to count as a dragon or like a subspecies of dragons? So, say like if we're talking like wyverns, like are
No.
those smaller than your big giant?
I'm an old Yu-Gi-Oh player, and one of the cards I used to run, because I used to run a Red Eyes deck, was Red Eyes Wyvern or Wyvern. And
Mhm.
we always used to get into these massive arguments around the nerd table about what actually counted as a dragon. Now, Brass is very much of the philosophy that a wyvern or a wyvern, or however you want to pronounce it, is a dragonkin. I
Mhm.
myself think that maybe you could make an argument for that, but I myself think a true dragon is four-limbed with two wings. I
Mhm.
would hope that the Wayward Realms is on board with that, because we've seen a lot of wyverns cosplaying as dragons in popular media over the last sort of decade or so.
Well, this is my own personal view, since I'll give that one first, and then we'll dive into the Wayward Realms version. But my own personal view is sort of like that. Not all dragons are wyverns, but all wyverns are dragons, kind of thing. That's where I see it.
I
So again, like
feel
that
like
whole
I've heard you say
dragonkin.
that to me before.
I might have. uh, I go around evangelizing that frame of you. But yeah, that's sort of how I always see it. Like I think, and when you look at like actual medieval art, which is probably like the oldest depictions of dragons that we do have, you see all kinds of different interpretations of them, right? And then obviously later on the line, especially with like D&D, we sort of try to categorize these things into different types of dragon. And so that's kind of how I approach that subject personally. I think like there is that room for these sort of creatures all fall into the label of dragon. But I do still lean on the, if you want to say like a proper, the baseline stereotypical dragon, I do think that's the four-legged winged winged version. And for Wayward Realms, we actually do have that type of dragon as the proper dragon. And we do have other draconic like creatures, which are wyverns, are scrags, which are like the little tiny swarming ones that we have. But those are more like a regular, everyday kind of creature, right? Not everyday like that. Obviously, you don't.
It's not as common as a cliff racer,
right? The community wouldn't forgive us, but but like those are your more mundane kind of creatures, right? They are big and scary and an apex predator, but they're very grounded. They exist in an ecosystem. They're part of it. However, our version of like what we call a dragon, a proper dragon, is something more of like a divine being, not a god, not.
We're sort of putting the cart before the horse here, because we were going to leave this bit to the end.
yeah, but I think it naturally went there anyway. But yeah, it's sort of, I guess, more along the line of you could say an angelic kind of being.
So there's a little bit of Elder Scrolls-y Akatoshian sort of tint to it. But then there's always this idea of dragons having the air of divinity about them. Most fantasies have an idea of this ritualized religious facet to their dragons. I'm thinking very much of the Aragon books right now, where you've got, you touch the egg and then you're marked and that you're linked to that dragon. And that's it. Until obviously the emperor took over the continent, it was very much a highly ritualized, highly significant thing that you bonded with this dragon. I'm also thinking of Dragonlance, where you've got actual good dragon god versus evil dragoness god, and so on and so forth. So I can certainly see the inspirations, but to sort of bring it back out of the Wayward Realms just for a moment, there is a more modern take on dragons, and that is of sort of raptor-like intelligence. If you think of Jurassic Park and you think of the clever girl moment, I kind of apply that to what we see in the Game of Thrones, especially television series, where these dragons are obviously intelligent, but they are not human level intelligence. There is this reptilian recognition. Maybe it's magical, maybe it's instinctual, of their masters and of Targaryens in particular. Out of just out of curiosity for you, what do you prefer? Do you prefer these sort of dumb but sort of animalistically intelligent dragons, or do you prefer these highly intelligent Smaug-esque, capable of speech dragons? What do you prefer?
I think it kind of just depends on the setting and the story, I think, for me. As long as it all kind of adds up and makes sense. I think, well, like going back to that sort of classification, we do see that more like wyvern design in things like Game of Thrones and say like Reign of Fire.
Skyrim? I think Skyrim popularized it.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. I think we've seen it going back quite a way, like Dragon Slayer, the movie, right, with Vermithrax Pejorative. I think one of the best dragons put to screen.
Where King Arthur was given a dragon's heart.
No, that's Dragon Heart.
That's Dragon Heart. Oh boy.
But I think, like that one, that was back, I think 81 maybe. and that had a wyvern, very wyvern design.
Mm.
Dragonheart did do, I think, a really good job at doing that four-legged winged dragon, and I think also just a great job of doing that intelligent talking,
Yeah.
you
You ever
know,
see the sequel to
divine
Dragonheart?
creature.
You ever see the
Yeah, I
sequel
actually
where
own.
they were farting
I
fire?
I actually own a pack of all the Dragonheart movies. They made like four, I think.
4?
So
I was only aware of
yeah,
2. Anyway,
yeah.
back
I
on
don't.
topic.
I don't think you've missed too much, but
They kind of peaked with the first one.
yeah, like a mountain peak and a very sheer
It's
drop
a
off.
mile high.
Yeah.
So you it's setting dependent, but
Mm,
on a so say you're going to sit down and you're going to run a Dungeons and Dragons campaign for your friends privately around a table. You get to decide what dragon is going in this campaign.
mm.
What does Victor first go to? What is his go-to choice?
Well, again, I think it depends on that story that I want to tell. If I want to go for that like really serious kind of almost world-ending type of threat kind of thing, I want that intelligent talking,
Mm,
plotting, scheming, you know,
mm.
this dragon with some agency, with an agenda, someone who's really like pulling strings and you know, being more than just a beast. However, again, and I think I'm a huge fan of the wyverns. I keep bringing them up, but I think that to me is like my perfect go-to like draconic monster to slay.
Just sort of well, you've released lore for the Wayward Realms where you've got hunting parties going after a wyvern.
Mhm.
Um, I still can't say wyvern without hearing my friends from high school shouting wyvern at me during our little Yu-Gi-Oh matches. Um, the lore snippets for that are harrowing because
Mhm.
it sort of gives this aspect of, oh, you need this big group of people to have a hope in hell of bringing one of these things down, and we're going to be going solo.
Well, and it'll depend on the type too, because we did mention there's three different types, which is your coastal wyverns, which is the one that they run into that lore snippet that we did, which is
Mhm.
you know smaller. I mean, it's still big, but it's the smaller of the three, and it's really like more like scavenging fish from
Mm,
fishermen and
mm,
taking down
mm,
small game, stuff like that. Then we got the woodland wyverns, which are bigger. They nest in forests, but they fly out, you know, miles to like open grasslands where they do their hunting, take cattle, whatever, that kind of thing.
mm, mm.
And those would be a bigger threat. And then we've got the mountain wyverns, which are the really big ones, very territorial, very
Don't mess with them.
dangerous. You don't want to mess with them. So, and a territory it sort of plays a big role in that. So, depending on where you're at in the world, is what you can kind of expect to run into, and just be
Mm.
mindful of where you're going.
So, in terms of moving away from dragging you away from wyverns and back to these fantastic dragons that are, shall we say, a little bit more. I hope I've used the right one there. Ooh, oh, I don't think I'm going to be able to show this to you, but I'll throw it up on screen in terms of editing. What's happening now is I have a character of my own. Oh, here she comes. There she is. It's going to take a moment for it to actually appear for you fellows watching. This is Phaelas. She is exactly the sort of dragon that you say you like. She was birthed from an old Dungeons and Dragons campaign that I ran where she was a villain. She's now a bit more of a neutral character in my actual mythos. But she is this hyper intelligent spell casting dragon queen that has a little kingdom and uses her magic to be very far seeing and to manipulate events around her kingdom. She doesn't particularly want to get out into ballista range, so to speak, but she's an incredibly powerful and, as you can see, wealthy ruler and sort of treated with, again, this sort of religious reverence.
Mhm.
So you said you like these apocalyptic dragons to be very schemy and having an agenda. What about one that is perhaps on the side of good?
Well, the benevolent ones are fine, but I find them a bit boring.
Oh, poor Phaelas. Bye,
You
Phaelas.
know, it's nice, but like, what do we really do with a benevolent, big, giant, powerful creature? Right? They don't really
Mm.
like. use that power or anything like that to really
You need a counterweight
have a big
for them,
impact.
really, in the world.
Mhm.
If they're
Right.
allowed sort of free reign, then things tend to go quite badly. The way, in fact, if people want to go to the lostlibrary.com while it is still open, you can read about the counterweight to Fairless, and that is the Wraith King, and they're constantly in sort of a magical tie down there in the world, piece of the world they inhabit. There is, I bring this up because you have, I believe, within your world, a dragon that is particularly not benevolent, but connected to a certain political um, happening with it. I don't want to say too much because I want you to say it. I don't want to spoil things. So, if am I allowed to talk about this particular dragon? I think you know the one I mean.
Yeah, I think we can
Yeah.
dive in there a bit.
So the Orcish kingdom of Shei
Mhm.
has a dragon which is consulted, or I say there is a dragon within the kingdom rather than the kingdom has a dragon that is consulted and sort of signs off on a new ruler of the kingdom.
Mhm.
So would that be a benevolent force, or is that simply a force that is kept happy?
Well, I guess first of all, the disclaimer that this is what is believed, or these are the rumors. This is what you hear, right? Like this isn't
Oh,
a
so it's not
known
a not a
fact,
common. Okay.
right? It's not something Oh, sure, everybody knows about that dragon over there. Right? They'll give you all the facts about it.
I
No, this
suppose
is
I suppose if Splendor thought there was a dragon there, they wouldn't be very antagonistic. They'd just be thinking they have a nuke and we need to be treated them very carefully.
well, but even in these like rumors, beliefs, whatever that you'll hear about, it is said this dragon lives in the volcano, which it's right out like the capital city of Edredra of She is sort of built kind of on the slopes of this volcano, and the dragon is said to reside within it.
Mm.
Um, and I believe the name is Raganoth. I
We
wrote
have a
the lore,
named
so
dragon. You heard it here first. Exclusives.
I wrote the lore for it, so I should remember.
Matt,
We got a lot of
I
lore.
understand forgetting that because I go back through my own notes for just the stuff I've written, and I don't remember writing all this.
Well, and then you get to go back and be like, oh yeah, that was really good.
Or you go back and go, oh, what was I thinking?
Well, I mean, I guess it depends on the skill, but
Oh, you got me.
no, but yeah. So, and I think another thing I did mention about our dragons is most of them have cults associated with them because they are sort of this kind of divine angelic sort of being. So there's people that are going to want to worship it, do its bidding, that kind of thing. And so there is one associated with that. And I guess the idea is that no king in She is allowed to rule unless they are accepted by the dragon, or the dragon gives permission for that to happen. Again, keeping in mind that She is matriarchal, right? So there's the queen and the queen's bloodline, so that's always steady in there, and the king is sort of that outsider that gets brought in, and so there's that sort of approval. Is this person worthy?
You and I have very different views of orcs. But I will say I very much appreciate the twist on orcs here being matriarchal societies, because that isn't something that people usually give to an orc society in the games they make or the mythoses they create. So that I think is quite unique to the Wayward Realms. Correct me in the comments down below right now if you've ever seen a matriarchal orc society in other media. Well, that's without wanting to talk too much over you because the commenters hate that. I'll let you continue with your.
I can hear them typing right now. But I guess just to quickly comment on that, I do appreciate that it's always more of a back and forth conversation as opposed to just like a presentation, right? So I'd never mind the interruptions and the little tangents we run off on.
Hey, I just so you know, if you want me to take your criticisms seriously, I always do to about a certain extent. But if you sign up for a membership down there and give me some money, I'll take it on board a bit.
There you go.
Of course, kidding.
But yeah, back to that. So it's as a player, you'll hopefully get to explore there and find out and see how this whole process works.
And kill the dragon, bringing down the entirety of the Shei kingdom.
But it's still kind of a mysterious kind of thing. Like, we don't really know exactly what's going on with that. Is that real? Is that a real dragon? Maybe it's just a dead dragon and the cult's saying, this is what that dragon wants.
I once played on a Neverwinter Nights roleplay server, and one of the most interesting dungeons I ever went through, because I role played with the Brass Drake. He was a paladin, I was a ranger, and we ran into this other paladin, and we all went into this one dungeon. And the deeper, because we were in this dungeon all night, because it was a hard dungeon, we were just fighting through kobolds and other monsters, and we thought there's going to be a dragon at the end of this, and we got really deep into the heart of this dungeon, and we found not a dragon, but the remains of this ginormous dragon. And it was one of the coolest things I have ever experienced in a game. And then the server crashed. So I think there is something to be said for dead dragons. Again, I keep bringing Brass up, but in his D&D campaign right now, my character is going looking for this holy dragon, which could be dead. It's very possible that no one's seen this dragon in a long, long time. So this idea that all these myths and legends revolve around these creatures, and sometimes they might not actually live up to the myth or the legend, is a very real possibility. Then again, it is a dragon.
And I think like I think I'm cutting out a bit.
We are having some technical difficulties. Stand by. We're back. Hello. Technical difficulties.
All right.
Where were we? Dragons?
So talking about potentially dead dragons, which I think is also one of those things that also varies from setting to setting. Some people have those in dragons, right? They're just a constant being that's around. In our case, it's sort of treading that line in that sense of like they are sort of this divine being, but they are also mortal. They can be slayed if that's what you want to do.
I
And
do wonder how the sandbox will react to that. In terms of the Wayward Realms, like the sandbox of the faction reputations and individual character reputations, I kind of want to take my character with a very low reputation where no one really knows who he is in, say, Shei. Maybe I've earned a reputation for this character up in the corner of the map and that's it. But I've ground levels enough to the point where I can just go down and kill a dragon, and everyone just like, what do you mean the dragon's dead? Who's he?
Yeah, well, and I guess I don't want to give away too much on that sort of stuff. So I'm picking my words carefully, but
let me clip it.
Obviously something like that is gonna be a big deal and not something you can just go casually do, right? So we do want that sort of ramification to come from it when it does happen. And there is also the like kind of like the wyverns, they are territorial as well. And it's sort of, I think we've mentioned before that we've got 13 dragons on the archipelago.
We have obviously they span the world. In the last interview here, you did.
Awesome. They do span the world, but since we are on the archipelago, that's how many there are there. And they are territorial creatures or beings. And so, they have their influences and their things that they're doing and plotting in the background or maybe just avoiding society in general, depending
just
on the
leave me alone, damn it. I want to count my coins.
Exactly.
Here's a question for you then. So it's not something you can just casually do to go and slay a dragon in the Wayward Realms. I usually in sort of sandboxy games where I'm allowed to, I will turn experience gain right the way down. So I will make it incredibly difficult to earn a level up. When I'm dungeon mastering if I'm using milestone for my dungeon mastering. I use XP mostly, but if I'm using milestone, characters will only ever level up every now and again. They really do need to earn those level ups.
Mhm.
I would like to ask, and I don't know how much you can say about this, in terms of being ready, if one is ever ready to fight a
Mhm.
dragon, how many hours would you say would be an acceptable amount of gameplay for a single character to go in with a magical sword or what have you and stab a dragon and actually succeed? Because in my head, I'm thinking you shouldn't be even attempting to fight a wyvern until you have got 100 hours under a character's belt. But that's just my way of thinking about something.
Mhm. I don't think I can really give a number at this point, just because all of that is still sort of up in the air, and
Hmm.
there's the balancing and the play testing and all that stuff to find the right amount of growth. And it's also, we don't really have player levels, right? It's all about skills. So
Yeah.
depending on what you're doing, maybe you're only doing one single thing and only leveling like one or two skills up, right? So what I would say is you definitely want to have a lot of maxed out major skills and minor skills, which don't max up, but like, get up to like
Mm.
50% or whatever.
And maybe a hell of a lot of
Yeah.
luck.
Yeah. You'll want to be equipped as best as you
Fire
can.
resist potions, fire resist rings, fire resist armor, fire resist cloak. It's an ice dragon. I one thing that I brought up in the other video, which will be coming out after this one, is that dragons really do need to have an impact. I think if you're doing something in genre fantasy, and this is not just the Wayward Realms, if you're doing something in genre fantasy, that means you have to have dragons. But if you have too many dragons, all of a sudden those dragons are devalued. Sort of how you view magic with you and your team. Um,
Mhm.
I get the feeling you go in for those. Every dragon is incredibly important to the ecosystem of the world, or sort of the mythos of the world. But does that mean you've got enough differentiation between all of them to sort of justify? Do you think 13 is the right number? I suppose is the simplistic way of asking this question.
I I think maybe that might even be too many, really, because it is meant to be a really,
Hmm.
it's an epic thing. It's not your regular everyday creature that you run into here or there. It's important. It's an important creature. I will also say, as far as like the differentiation of them and stuff, each one has a name, each one has a personality, each one has a goal, each one has their own special horde. So like we
Mm.
do our Wayward Realms spin on that is like, yes, dragons have hordes, but they're not gold. Sometimes they're gold depending on the dragon, but they can be a lot of different things, and that ties into their personality and their goals and all that stuff.
You've
So
got a wizard dragon, haven't you? He's hoarding spells, isn't he? It's not a denial.
there's no comment.
You heard it here first, folks. Yeah, it reminds me of the little comic with the little tiny cat-sized dragons, one of which was hoarding frogs. Where am I looking here? I'm just checking some notes I wrote down here. Um, Territory. That's something that is interesting, as if you look at a map of, say, the Forgotten Realms, and I think the Forgotten Realms kind of struggles from an overpopulation of dragons, especially the way I'm having to run my particular Forgotten Realms campaign at the moment. There are so many named dragons alive in the Forgotten Realms at any one point. It's really difficult to tell how such a huge beast would have any kind of space to itself.
Mhm.
Um, in my mind, dragons being winged couldn't have territory which stretches for miles upon miles upon miles, and they can travel hundreds of miles this way or that way and consider that their territory. I know that it's a big map,
Mhm.
But are the dragons sort of equidistant from one another, or is there one dominating another, or are they fighting over territory between themselves? Do they tend to have confrontations in the air, or is it more a chess game where they're all moving their own pieces? I would be interested to know what, because there's the politics game of the kings and the queens and the counts and the war chiefs and what have you. I
Mhm.
would be interested to know, there might not be mechanics for this, but in sort of a mythos, the lore, is there, layered over all of this, a separate dragon political game being played?
I guess the simple answer would be a yes.
You heard it here first, folks.
Yeah, these are beings. Well, I guess when you think about it, like, what does an angel do, right? This is an angelic type of being, so you can kind of. I'll leave it to your imagination to sort of assign this sort of like greater purpose that these creatures have.
So they're angelic, which means you have multiple gods and goddesses.
Mhm.
So does that mean these dragons are emissaries of particularly aligned, whether good or evil gods and goddesses? And maybe you see, now I'm just thinking of Final Fantasy Dissidia, but with dragons.
I'm afraid I will neither confirm nor deny this.
What are you, a politician? No, that's incredibly interesting, and I think on that tantalizing little bit of info, we've been going for about 30 minutes. Is there anything more, perhaps, that you would like to talk about in particular, or should I wrap us up?
I've got one lore tidbit from Ted that I had shared with you that I think people might like.
Do it.
But aside from that, I do want to, before that, say, like, I keep bringing up the wyverns, right? I keep mentioning.
We're back here again.
not just because I wrote their lore, because I think they're cool.
If I do say so myself.
Right. But we talk about the dragons being this sort of like much greater, bigger thing, right? That's not going to be anything that you touch in like the first few hours or anything like that. But by having those wyverns in there, they sort of fill that other role that we see of dragons, where dragons are this creature that needs to be slain, right? It's dangerous. It can be attacking a village. It could, be running off with cattle or something like that. So we specifically put them in there to sort of serve that role of that big monstrous creature that you go out and slay and be the hero, where maybe sometimes slaying an actual dragon is not the heroic thing to do.
If you don't think that there is going to be someone that does a run entirely on slaying all of the dragons, my gears are whirring. Something you said there has set my gears are whirring, and I know some commenters don't like it when I do this, but some of these dragons wouldn't happen to have wyverns under their command, would they?
I'm afraid I'm going to have to say no on that one. Just because wyverns they're not a super intelligent creature, right? They are a monstrous creature. They exist out in the sea. They're an apex predator, but they're not really something that would be tamed even by a dragon.
Okay. So what was this other tidbit of lore that you have for the lovely people of the library who are now liking and subscribing for more of this style of content if they like it? And I might be able to drag him back for lore and other things.
So this is just a fun one that Ted came up with and insisted we put in, but that is that it is incredibly lucky when a dragon happens to poop on your field as like a villager or a farmer, because it's sort of a divine poop, if you will. So good things are gonna happen to that field.
It's like being pooped on by a bird, but upgraded.
Exactly, just that like magnitudes higher.
I went to those birds of prey shows that are sometimes put on by Aries and things like that. I went to one of those as a sort of a young teenager with my mother, and we were watching this hawk, I think it was, flying around above us and doing tricks and coming to the trainer when he was called for food. And something occurred to me in the back of my mind. That bird's going to crap on me. And I was wearing a raincoat, and I put my hood up, and not 2 seconds later did that bird crap on me. So There you
Your
go.
spider sense kicked in.
It did. You reminded me of a core memory. Well, thank you very much for coming on again, sir. I would very much like to make a habit out of picking your brains on lore things, because one thing that I love doing is learning about different fantasy mythoses. And
Mhm.
from what I know of the Wayward Realms, and especially of Mr. Peterson, is that you have some very interesting minds at work over there, which are producing some very interesting ideas. And they're my sort of ideas, this grounded and traditional fantasy, which I'm keen to stress does not mean gritty and dirty and
Mhm.
plague ridden. I'm really looking forward to exploring this world. And I do believe it is June of this year that we are slated for the early access release. And I will maybe touch base with you again. So maybe next month, if we'll see where we're at, and maybe pick some more of your brains if you've got any left.
Sure thing. And I guess just a quick clarification that the June would be for our Kickstarter backers, and to shamelessly plug it ourselves as well. Late pledges are still open on Kickstarter for those that do want to hop in June. Otherwise, it'll still be a
Indeed.
few more months for general public early access.
Indeed, as always with these videos that I do with Victor and co over at Once Lost Games, their link tree is in the description of this video. Do go ahead, give it a click, and you can still get in. I highly recommend it. As I say, I've not had more fun waiting for a game. I think one of the things that I'm going to miss about the build up to the Wayward Realms is looking forward to the Wayward Realms. It's a really strange position. Really strange. The anticipation is great, and we'll see if you may deliver yet, although I have every faith in you, sir. Thank you very much for coming on. Before we go, guys, this Monday coming, 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 9 p.m. for us Brits, there is a brand new live actual play of Untold Destiny. Those of you that are looking forward to the Wayward Realms might appreciate some of the mechanics in that TTRPG as I sit down with the creator of that game, Dean Hilljout, and his lovely wife, plus my good friend, the Brass Drake, and play through as Virgil Valens, the Ranger, alongside Ava, the Enchantress, well, Invoker, and Sadin the Paladin as we go and rescue Longreach from some orcs. Orcs are evil, Victor. I'll not broach any other argument on this.
Well, that's orcs with a C, and that's why we put a K in ours. So that's the difference.
First mod for the Wayward Realms I want to see is that corrected. Thank you very much for coming, and I will see you all in the next one. Bye-bye.
Bye.